Hi, everybody. Hi,
Hi,
Tzi.
hi, Tzili.
Hey, Etgar Keret,
Hi.
the writer. Tough days, huh?
Yeah, more ways than one. It's Holocaust Memorial Day. There is there are a turmoil in the Israeli society, and I have a herniated disc. So
Oh,
I think that
terrible.
we were attacked on all levels, historically, geographically, and anatomically.
So
And culturally.
you're grounded? Can you
No,
walk?
I'm not going. No, I'm already better. But today I went to a shiva, and it's a long car ride. So
Shiva is when somebody dies and everybody sits at the 7 days.
Yeah.
For
And
the
of somebody we all loved,
Yeah,
Mirke Shalev.
yeah, Meir Shalev, yes, of
Unbelievable,
course,
yeah.
Like, I think,
yeah.
like, I guess people like him and with God blessing, you're not included, but you, maybe Grossman, maybe Chaim Be'er, it's getting to be like a handful
Yeah.
of people who
Oh,
have
but
God.
that's the way it is. It's like you have all kinds of people who write or who are politicians or are scientists, and they grow older and they die and then new ones come. It's not like there are more where we came from.
Well, but we are not exposed to really a bunch of new voices. Maybe you are.
No. I think the problem is that when talented young writers these days are writing fiction or nonfiction, it's much more difficult to find your audience. First, because there are less people who read, and also because there is something about the system as it is that it's almost impossible to enter it. You
Wow.
know, I mean, today I think it's much more likely that, let's say, if you have a very strong Instagram or Facebook page with a lot of following, then publishers will want to publish you. It's not the other way around. If you
What
write
about
a book,
you? Do you have?
oh yeah. I have a, I'm mostly focused on a newsletter called the Alphabet Soup. And the thing about a newsletter is that for me, I found that it's, let's say, I mean, there are many things that I dislike about social media, but if you handle it the right way, the thing is, the problem with Facebook is that, let's say, I write a story and I post it on Facebook. The people who are going to see it are people who are simply bored. They would like to see what Tzipi had for dessert, where Tzili went for vacation, what story I wrote, a short movie of a kitten. They don't mind. And that's a bad audience. But the moment that you create a newsletter, then basically the people you're able to gather around are the people who
Your
are
people.
interested.
Your people.
Yeah, and to these days, like whenever I write a new story, I publish it on my newsletter, and I get feedbacks, and it's very, very effective. I mean, there are like social medias like Twitter that I would never try because I'm afraid that being an obsessive thinker, it will enslave me. It's like instead of
Addiction.
writing stories, I will write tweets. But I think that in general, this kind of new age and technology, they offer opportunities, for young writers. It's just that I think that you can't do things the old way. It's really like I used to be a professor in a film school, and I met one of my students, and he said, "Professor, you cheated us." And I said to him, "Why?" And he said, "You taught us a profession that doesn't exist, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, nobody makes films these days. You know, people do stuff for TV, but everything you taught us is really not relevant unless we find a time machine. And you know, it's kind of hit me because I think that young people today can create visually, can create textually, but if they'll kind of, you know, say, okay, I'll write a manuscript and send it to publishers, then the chances are very, very low. If, on the other hand, they say, okay, what word am I living in? What can I use in this word? How can I communicate through it? Then their situation will be much better. And I'm saying, you know, I'm not a young guy, but
Doesn't matter.
I'm
Your passion is like a young,
Do
but
you
I don't
think-
see a difference in terms of passion or the need to write or make
yeah.
films. You know,
No, but I'm saying I'm not a young guy, but I force myself to learn what younger people
right.
learn, just because my goal had stayed the same and the system had changed, so I could just either bang my head against the wall or
But
try
you
to
think,
adjust.
Etgar, that the fact that you write short stories, because you started, you know, this was a really like a new thing when you had it in the beginning, very short stories, because people don't have maybe patience, you know, to read long stuff, because I see how everybody is short on reading, and it maybe helped. Do you think?
Well, first of all, I think that I'm some kind of a neurotic prophet because I lost my patience long before humanity. But I think that you're right that, you know, short stories are much easier to consume with a shorter attention span, and at least my attention span had become much shorter. But I'm saying something more than that. For example, let's say I discovered podcasts. So it's something that I really like about podcasts, because the fact that you are not being filmed, you know, it doesn't have this kind of urgency of a TV, and that you can listen to it while, I don't know, you wash the dishes,
Yes.
you know,
Mhm.
then it became, I think, in modern time, like a new way to communicate.
Very popular
and
here.
actually,
Very
and
popular.
yeah,
In Israel too.
Also US.
so I can say that, you know, that, for example, for me, the most meaningful project that I've made, I would say at least in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe in my lifetime, is basically collaborating on a podcast with Ira Glass for This American Life about my mother, you know, talking about Holocaust Memorial Day, who was a Holocaust survivor. So I'm saying, if you would ask me 20 years ago, would you want to do a podcast about your mom? I would say no. You know, it's serious matter. I would want to write a book. But now I realize that it's not less serious in any ways. It has the same depth, and it's just something that I used to perceive radio as something that you put in your car when you go to visit your aunt, you know, and that it's either people kind of arguing about politics in a very shallow and loud way, or country music, you know. It's not it's not a medium in which you can have a serious discussion. Now, these days, when I want to learn something about economy or about philosophy, I just look for the relevant podcast.
Yeah, but you know,
so
but you have other venues. I just heard a program with Avishai Cohen, Eviatar Banai, and the musician, what is his name? Shaba. What is first name? Shaban. What is the first name? Never mind.
Shlomi Shaban.
And they were doing music with lyrics to one of your stories. Did you know?
Oh, wow. No, I didn't
Well,
know that.
well,
You sure?
sure, I'm sure there is a commercial. Sure, yes, I'm sure. But there is a line there. If I remember well, something that you say that you are less whatever than the woman you love. Is it possible that you said something like that in one of your books?
That
Stories?
I'm less
Whatever, less important or
Say it
less
in
worthwhile.
Well, I think that there is a song maybe that I wrote for Evyatar Bana that is called
Okay. Yeah, okay.
that it's called Many People Resemble Me,
That's it.
but nobody looks like you.
Yeah, I
No,
think this is it. Check
yeah,
it out. So I was, we were just talking to, to the musician, composer Ella Sharif, and she
yes.
composed music to a painting. So
Wow.
we and I
A
rarely.
series of paintings that were made based on women and the girls who were perished in the Holocaust, and the artist turned it to positive, beautiful paintings, and Ella wrote a piece for each painting and each character.
But the music, if I remember well, it was like almost like praying. And I was thinking about you. Do you pray?
Uh, I think that I yearn, which is a more agnostic way of praying, but I think many times I'm focused at what I would want to happen. I just don't treat it as if I'm kind of operating the microwave or making myself a coffee. I say, wow, I would want this to happen. I would give everything for this to happen. But I'm not assuming that there is anybody out there who's doing takeaways. But praying is good.
So what happened to you now with all these incredible times that we don't really, how can you write? Can you focus and write stories with everything
Not
that
so
happens?
much, not as much. I would say that there is something. I think that it's a little bit. Let's say, writing is a bit like dancing. So it's more difficult to dance when there is an earthquake. It's like it's difficult to do fancy moves. When the earth is shaking. And I feel that it's funny, but many times when I feel very creative and I try to channel it to writing a story, in the end, I find myself, I don't know, uh, writing a new sign for a
Oh
demonstration,
my God.
or writing an op-ed about the situation. You know that I had a sign in one of those demonstrations that said, I used to write books, now I write signs.
Oh
And
my
then you
God.
can collect
Oy, oy,
all
oy.
the signs and have a book of
Yeah, well,
signs.
that's not. But tell me something. Reading your books, and you can correct me because you don't have to analyze what you do, or maybe yes, maybe not. But so I almost feel like you look at a person or society or slice of life or something, and you almost take it apart, and then somehow you construct it again in your own way. So if you agree with me or not, this is how I feel. So can you somehow put this into, how do you look at what's happening? Can you take it apart and see if would it will be possible to construct it in a way that we can keep our love?
Well, again, I think that the legacy that my two late Holocaust surviving parents had given me is really this idea that you need to be optimistic in a way that you believe your optimism, and it's crucial for your survival. It's really like, if you want to survive, you have to think that things can get better. It's really, I remember that during the second intifada, after I got married, I talked to my parents and I said to them, I really want to have a child, but at the same time, I think that the world there is so crazy that it would feel wrong to bring a child to this world. And my mother laughed and she said, if after they murdered my entire family, I found myself enough hope to bring you, then maybe you should give it a try. And there is something about it, that this idea that when you look around you, you see a lot of fragmented pieces of reality, and you construct them. And usually, like the media would serve you two opposing narratives, you know.
Right.
Like, you know, you would say, oh my God, Trump is going to ruin this country, or oh, Biden is senile, you know, the aliens are taking over, you know. But basically, they just give you a couple of options, and you have to choose.
Sure.
If and with me, I feel that, you know, let's say I I I really try to keep my own personal narrative in this big turmoil. So for example, when I go to the protests, then there is something that fills me with optimism that I used to take part in many protests, left-wing protests. Now, usually the left-wing protests, everybody that would come would share the same ideas. But with this current protest, when you have to deal with people who want to dismantle Israel's democracy, or, you know, to weaken the Supreme Court, or to affect equality, then in the bottom line, you can see in one protest, let's say, a guy who's an Air Force pilot who's demonstrating because he knows that without a strong court, when he'll take his children to a vacation, you know, he'll be arrested and sentenced in Hague, next to people who are fighting for Palestinian rights in the territories. So they don't share their opinions.
It's not about left and right.
Yeah, but you understand that you have something in common. So
it's about
when I go there, I can see people, religious people, demonstrating for democracy next to homosexual and lesbians demonstrating for democracy. And in this ecosystem, there is this kind of ability to coexist, you know, because it's not like an ideological camp who wants to advance its fully articulated ideology. It's really people who are fighting an exterior threat, you know, like people fighting a storm, you know, people, I don't know, fighting COVID, you know. And there is something about these things that kind of, it also has a uniting power. I think that it's funny because it's Holocaust Memorial Day, and I remember that when I was a child, I asked my father if for him the Holocaust was a bad time, which is basically, you know, a question that only a 5-year-old
question, yeah.
A 5-year-old can ask. And my father looked at me and he says, you know, son, I don't think that there are good times or bad times. The way I look at it, there are easy times and difficult times. All my life, I yearned for the easy times, but I have to admit that it was the difficult times in which I've learned stuff about more things about myself. So in a sense, you know, the way of structuring things, my father didn't say anything that was different than what all the other people said. But not only did he make this reality his own, but he was able to form it to something that is not a 100% something. It could be 92% something or 86% something. And you know, my parents as Holocaust survivors, they were always like that. Because let's say my father, I remember that once in school they taught us about the lesson of the Holocaust. In Israel, they talk a lot about the lesson of the Holocaust.
Right.
And when I told to my father, he laughed and he said, you know, I think that the Holocaust was big enough to allow a lot of lessons, you know. Do you think that in all those years...
Very unusual.
Very smart. Unusual. Yeah.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Very smart.
But I think now the hope was crushed and everybody came out, you know.
But they all picked up the flag.
Yeah,
that's how the Israeli flag, suddenly everybody picked it up.
Got a new life, the Israeli flag, after that it was abused.
And the Declaration of Independence. Yeah. Suddenly everything, you know, it used to be actually that a lot of people hanged, you know, I think it was more the right wing who hanged the flag in
the last 2 years, yeah.
But suddenly it's, you know.
Yeah. It's, again, you know, it's for me the same way that I cannot hold a sign that I didn't write. it's very difficult for me to hold the flag, because the moment that I hold the flag, I feel I'm working for somebody. You know,
Really?
when I hold my thing, you know, I could write a sign, you know, Israel, you're in my heart. But I'm saying, if I can't even articulate it, you know, if I can't express it, then I don't feel I own it, you know,
So
and I'm just a guy. I'm
don't you
just a
think
guy
the
holding something.
holding the flag is actually externalizing the internal?
Yeah, but I'm again, you know, I'm saying I'm not. I feel that something beautiful happened to the flag, and you know, and when I go to demonstrations, I feel that I perceive it differently. But I think that, you know, even let's say when you cook, then the good recipe is to mix tastes, right? It's not that I cook, but I'm saying you put something a little bit bitter and then something sweet, and then and I think that the way that if I would look, I don't know, at this protest as some kind of a dish, then I feel that you need to have the flag as some kind of a dough, you
Yes,
know, to carry it.
the flour,
But
yes.
if
Hold
it's
it
only the
together.
flags,
Yeah.
it's faceless, you know. And I'm saying, you know, I said to my son that he asked me which signs I think are the best signs in demonstration, and I say, I think that the best signs are the signs that the only the person who carries them can carry them. That nobody they can't steal it from. You know, I went to last week to demonstration. I saw a sign. Somebody said, uh, my grandmother Rachel didn't walk all the way from Morocco to Israel just to have another king.
Yeah. Wow.
So when I see this sign, I can't say to somebody, hey, give me this sign, because my mom is a Holocaust survivor. She didn't walk here from Morocco. I need to make my own sign. And I'm saying it doesn't have to be only with your biography. It could be with your choice of words. It could be if you like to rhyme. It could be if you have a sense of humor or a sense of pathos.
Right.
But the idea is that you make this choice. You know, I'm saying the same way that I think, you know, I really, really like to order takeaway. But I'm saying, you know, to have some kind of a balanced diet, I need sometimes to have a home cooked meal, you know.
Tell me something.
So
Is your
yes.
son can write a sign? My father didn't write his short stories for the people who don't want to read or listen.
Well, my son doesn't go to demonstrations.
Oh no?
No, and it was very nice, because I think it was some aunts that said to him, "But you have to go." And he said, "Auntie, if I would have to go, then the demonstration would mean nothing. They mean something just because there are people like me who choose not to go."
Yes, yeah, that's. I'm trying to understand what is the subtext there.
He's a teenager also.
Yeah, and I think that he's a teenager. I think that that with me, I feel that this idea of an entity, of a country, of a society, is something that I was brought up on. You know, it was the fantasy of my parents coming to Israel to have a country for the Jews, and I think that my son lives in an age where all the people who have the same hobbies and understand him, yeah, are in his computer feed, and
Right.
basically, country or society is just the annoying people, you know, because on his computer he just communicates with the people he wants, and the
No.
only people who he's forced to communicate with are the people he bumps into in the street. And I think that this is a sentiment that I see many times, because, you know, right now, I don't know if you think about the state, you know, I read a survey, you know, I mean, all those surveys, you know, we should be suspicious about them. But I read the survey that they made where they asked avid Republicans and avid Democrats how many of them would oppose if their children would date a Muslim. And I think that, you know, at least at the survey, on both sides, like, I mean, the Democrats were more that were open to it, but even with the Republicans, it was like 25% said they wouldn't have it, and 75% said we'd live with it. We live with it. Now they asked the Democrats and the Republicans if your son or daughter would marry somebody from the other camp, like if a Republican would marry a Democrat, how many of them would you accept that? And only 50% accepted that. And I think that there's something very interesting about that, because the truth is that for many people, I don't know, the son marrying a Muslim is an idea, but the son marrying a Democrat or Republican, it's that guys they always want to beat up. It's that guys that always get on the nerves in the bar,
right,
and turns the TV on Fox News, and and say those dumb things. So I think that really, when I look through the eyes of my son, with technology, this idea of society or community is being challenged, and the idea that he should root for the people who are in the closest proximity to himself seems like something that is a little bit odd. When I ask him, do you think you're going to live in Israel in the future? And he says, oh, that I'm going to live in many places. I think that Israel will be one of them, but I don't see myself living in one place,
But there are a few things. I think that your son, he's growing up with a family, and I'm not talking about parents only, that each one has its own voice, that it's not like in the general voice of everybody. And in order to find his place and to carry out his voice, he's doing something else. And he's looking for something, not to join everybody, just to find his spot and reflect
every teenager. I'm more worried that his mind was engineered.
Why?
By what?
Well, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but when I watch the internet and listen to people on the internet, I'm not sure if their perception is not distorted to do what she does, what she just said, trying to be different, trying to be provocative. There is something, but I'm not sure about the genuine connection to oneself.
Yeah, but I do think that, what I think is, that the internet is a technology. It's like a little bit like a megaphone. If I take a megaphone and will think to you, are you lonesome tonight? You would think that a megaphone is a wonderful invention. And if I would curse you,
but I
would say, oh my God, life became worse since this technology had been made. So I think that, by the way, looking at my son is like 17 years old. If he was 70 years old, this would mean that I look young. But he's 17 years old, and he's working on his BA in math, which he learned through the computer completely.
Wait, BA? Undergraduate in 17?
Yeah, he's studying kind of courses in mathematics, and he likes it. And he has friends all over the world. One of his best friends lives in Portugal, another one lives in Germany, and he everything that if there's something that he doesn't know, let's say if I ask him, hey, how can you do this and this and this, and program this, get a package, then he knows how to study and learn this. And he has many proficiencies that I don't have. And I'm saying that I agree with Tzili that being a teenager, you have to rebel. But I think that, I've been living in this same apartment, which you can see, this tiny room in a tiny apartment. I've been living in it for 30 years.
30?
30.
Well,
and I will probably die in it, because I see no incentive of moving. I like my neighbors. Everything's okay. Why would I go into the hassle of moving? And while my son, really, there is something a little bit more nomadic about him. This idea is that he wants to experience things and he wants to be in other places. No, I'm saying I think that it's not necessarily good or bad, but I feel that it's there are many different things, and I don't know. It's like when it comes to video games, then when our son started playing them, then I watched all those TV things saying it's horrible, it's violent games. He will become senseless. He'll lose his mind. And what happened was that I asked my son, I said, can you teach me all the games that you play? And he taught me, and some of those games were really dumb and, didn't develop you in any way. But others were actually exactly the equivalent of the games that we played as children. It's really like I don't know, hide and seek and stuff like that. But it's basically he's playing it with people around the world.
But it's about many games, because I've seen years ago when I visited a place that basically put together a lot of new ideas. And I saw that it's exactly what we grew up on, just in a different technique. And that really talks to these people. But the definition of the room, what you mean a room and what he means a room, is a very different room. The definition is different. The whole idea about territory and a place and the relations is a very different story when you talk to these young people, and they live through, their neighborhood is huge and it has no borders, and it's a very different story. So I think they live in a different world in a way, and we're just trying to hang on so we don't lose it. But we're not talking about the same things, and that's why we always say, oh, it's not good, we had it better. No, it's different. It's all the same, just different. And every technique, you use it for good and you use it for bad.
Yeah, I think that, it's a little bit what happened with technology advancing, that it's a little bit kind of a leverage, it's really, or a tool. It's a little bit, let's say, people always wanted to kill each other, they used to do it with rocks, now they do it with nuclear bombs. Now, the idea that, nuclear energy can light up the entire planet, or it can destroy the planet. In the bottom line, I think that every generation has its inventory. It has the stuff that it can use, and the way that we're moving or escalating is that this stuff, could help or ruin, on kind of on a bigger scale.
It's always about how you use it and about ethics. And
it's today you have 3D printers that can print out a human heart or a bomb. It just it's you clicking the
different
button.
buttons.
I say that this is like the industrial revolution, the 3D, the way it changed the world.
It's bigger.
But now the AI,
I think that the GPT is the biggest revolution. And I really, really think, the way that I see it, I may sound morbid, but what I think is that basically the way that people were able to find meanings to their life, exterior to religion, was that they wanted to see their role as important, as helpful to society. Now, I think that already now, but in 10 or 12 years, we will need to invent ourselves another story. I want to say that, the way that I see my writing had changed a lot through the years. Because when I was young, of course I was more vain, but I really saw kind of my role in society, trying to tell things. And now I feel like, that regardless of the age, as if I'm in some kind of a pension, trying to make myself think and to communicate with people. And it's not me serving society. It's basically me kind of trying to hang out with society and make it nice for both of us. But I don't have this feeling that that my role is important. And I think that, I go a lot with taxi drivers because I don't drive well. So when I talk to taxi drivers, it's almost common that, taxi drivers that usually you either talk about politics or don't talk at all. They talk to me about this fact. They say, in 10 years, there will be a car going on by itself.
Yeah.
And you really say, and and I tell them, in 10 years there will be a computer writing my stories.
Yeah.
Well, both of us, we're going to play squash together, but there's going to be also a computer that will play squash for us.
Are
Then
you
we'll have to
worried?
think about something else.
Are you worried that, they will be able to write stories that will use your language, your voice?
I already took part in a journalistic project where they kind of fed all the stuff I wrote to a GPT, and I wrote a story, and GPT wrote a story, and they gave it to people, and they had to find out
Who is who?
and who is who. But and I must say that right now it's still easy, but it's going to become harder. But what I want to say is that I think I'm not afraid at all that, let's say, there will be computers that will write as well or better than me. I'm really not afraid of that, because I think what I say to taxi drivers, you know what? When there will be autonomic cars, you can still drive for fun. You go to the country and drive your car in circles. And I'm saying I can still write, and I can still affect the people around me. If there's something I'm scared of, is that the way that the GPT works, it's not really like, as we say in those sci-fi movies, that it's smarter than us, but what it knows, it's a statistic model. So let's say if they want to write a story, they write a story about the stuff that people are interested in. And if they want to make a change, they make a change that will make most people amused from. So this is a little bit like the philosophy of McDonald's, that you make a hamburger. Let's say if the hamburger would be super spicy, or with many seasoning or very specific, many people will say I can't eat it. But if you make it kind of flat enough, then everybody can take it. And I think that what I'm afraid of is that when people will get used to consuming these texts or these movies, because they're going to make movies like this too, then the problem will be that the moment that they will have to deal with a voice that is not speaking that exact language, they will find it strange or weird. It's a little bit like, let's say, if you lived in a place where everything was reproductions of art, and I would give you an authentic Van Gogh or Picasso painting, you would say, no, I don't know, it's not as flat, you have all those lamps on it, I don't like it, I want it to be like the reproduction. So I think that if I have any fear that it will kind of diminish our word and our taste, but this doesn't necessarily mean that this what would happen. This just means that that's what I'm scared of.
But going back to our life in reality, there are a lot of people think, should I write this story? Let's say filmmakers. Which fund will finance it? Because today everybody, is programmed to think not his voice only, but the chances that other people will not accept your voice. And if I want to keep writing or keep making movies, I better adjust to whatever was planted in my perception.
So I think that that there is something about it, that as somebody who's a writer but who also makes films, I always felt that I tread on safer grounds than filmmakers like that you are majorly a filmmaker, because what I felt was that for writing, I don't need a budget, I don't need money, I can always write what I want. If nobody will publish it, I'll print it in my computer and give it to people in the cafe. I can be autonomous. Now, the way that it's happening now, Tzipi, in 5 years, you can make your own movies with no budget. You say, first scene, a handsome dark man. No, he's not handsome enough. Sorry, he's too dark. Can you make him taller? Yeah, I don't like him. Can you make him more Anthony Hopkins-like? And you will mold things into things. And basically, it will be just a question of time. And if you be willing to sit on your own, then the same way I write a story, you'll make a movie. And the beautiful thing about it is that if when you come to funds or people who want to fund you, they say, you know what, Tzipi, if we can't find 3 million people who are interested in this stuff, if we can be reassured that those people exist, then we don't want to bet on you. But the moment that you say, hey, I have this thing, I can make it, I don't ask anybody for permission, maybe 20 million people would like it. I can tell you something really silly and very, very Israeli, but I worked for a TV show many, many years ago, 30 years ago, called the Chamber Quintet, החמישייה הקאמרית, which was, I would say, maybe some kind of an equivalent of Saturday Night Live in Israel.
Yes, right.
Now, when I started working in it, all the people that worked in it had one thing in common. No other show would take them because you know, I was a writer with no background in writing scripts. You know, the Modi Baron, who wrote other sketches, was a stand-up comedian who couldn't get enough gigs, you know, and basically 2 of the 5 actors were actually film directors who couldn't get a budget to direct. So we were all doing kind of something that we were not extremely good at. And the only reason that they let us do it was because it was super cheap. So they said, we have to to invest money in local production. This is the law.
Yeah.
Your production is the cheapest. We can air it on midnight where nobody would see that you guys don't know what you're doing. And everybody will be happy. And in the end, what happened was that this became the most popular show of its time, with a lot of rating, with people that experts would explain to you that they would never see this show because, you know, it's not in their taste. They actually liked it. So I'm saying nobody can really, really predict it. But the moment that there is money involved, there are people who are forced to predict it. And that means, because, you know, if Tzipi, if you tell me I want to make a movie and it's just like, I don't know, like 2 hours, me talking to Tzili while we're having dinner, then I would say, oh, you know, I don't know if you can find an audience, but one of the best movies I've ever
dinner
saw.
with Andre.
Yeah, it was my dinner with Andre, and basically it was, you know, 2 guys having a dinner and speaking. And
it's not many like this.
No, it doesn't always work. But what I'm saying is that the difference, I think, between an artist and an investor is that an artist is always sure that what he wants to say is extremely interesting. And when you gain experience with the years, you know that the sensation will always be there, and that sometimes you get those people and sometimes you won't, and that when you won't get those people, you never know if it was just you were just unlucky, or basically what you did wasn't good enough, and you just keep on going because that's what the artist keeps going. So I'm saying that the moment that you'll be able to make your movies alone, everything will be easier.
Make like documentary, I just go by myself with my own quick.
Yeah.
But technology is biting artists hard, and it's interesting to see what will take place.
Yeah, I'm saying, I think, you know, I'm working a lot with illustrators, you know, now when you have AI like DALL-E, and you know, and I have many friends who are photographers who had to live through the age in which people started taking photos on their iPhone, because, you know, in the past you needed to have the right light and the right lens and to develop the film correctly. So there was some kind of an expertise that kept it away. But I don't think that today people don't make beautiful photography, but I think that if you delve deep into it, you feel in the contemporary work the fact that they need to differentiate themselves from an iPhone photo. And I feel that this is something that, again, you know, I think, you know, when I was young, people used to say, people don't read these days, you know, they just watch TV. And then they said, oh, they don't read, and they watch the internet. And maybe their great-grandparents, they say, oh, they don't read, and they watch films, you know. And before that, they say they don't read, they go dancing with girls, you know. In the bottom line, you know, it's not as if there were periods in which people were curious and experimental and deep, and people in which people and periods in which people were shallow. I think that the structure was different and the way to people's heart was different. But in the bottom line, it stays the same game.
It's hard to change the concept, and I think that the sentiment of what you're familiar with and the value of what you feel as part of this culture is being threatened, by new things and the new voices, but it's happening all the time, and it's hard to be a part of it.
But also the way to find the new way, even those photographers you're talking, there is until between what it was and what it becomes, it's very hard to find how to cope with that.
Yeah, but I'm saying, when you talk about you making the documentaries on your own,
yeah,
I mean, you two are young women, but I remember the times in which you were unable to make a film like that because you had to take a 35 millimeter camera, right, which was super expensive and very heavy. And the shots that you take, of the little boy pushing his brother, you could never take it because you had to make a shot and light it,
Yeah.
So I'm saying, I'm just kind of trying to be a little bit like my dad. I'm saying that, maybe you don't understand the system, the marketing, but in a sense, if you look in your micro level, it's actually many things that were difficult for you are now easier. It's a little bit like, when we look at this time and we see so many things that are really threatening, it's a crazy time. But, my dad would say, but look what's happening with medicine, maybe in 5 or 10 years, they'll find a cure to everything. So many of the problems that we have, we are dealing with them so easily now. So what I want to say is that I think that what's threatening us is some kind of a reductive narrative, which is carried and becomes viral in social media, which means that we live in a world where we have to like and unlike stuff. So ambiguity is not a good commodity in social media. But I'm saying we shouldn't allow ourselves, to adopt this narrative. We should kind of look at it, and say, okay, this is what they're offering in the store. I don't want the combo. I don't want, the buy three, get one for free.
What's good for me.
Yeah, but listen, when before I pick up the camera myself, I had a cameraman, right? Because as you said, I couldn't really do it myself. Looking at you straight in the black of your eyes is different than looking to you through the lenses.
For sure.
And it took me a long time to understand how to almost reclaim my inquiry about the nuances in your face as is and through the lenses. It is different, and
I agree with you. I
go myself because I hate to raise money.
No, but I agree with you. But really, what I want to say, maybe I don't know, kind of return to what we talked before. But when I said that I used to write books, now I write signs. When I write a sign, I try to enjoy it and own it the same way that I own my books, or my stories. So I'm saying it's a process. It's a process trying to, when I wrote stories and then I started writing scripts, it was a process. But actually, there is something that I think almost a positive in this process, because imagine that, that you would already know how to do everything, and that nothing would be a mystery to you, and that you wouldn't be afraid to go on a shooting day because you have a new camera and you're not sure if you know how to charge it. All those kind of things are kind of making us more alive, more in the moment.
You're right.
And so I'm not trying to convince you that
no, you're talking like your father.
But I'm saying I'm trying to keep more than one voice in my head, because when I listen outside of my head, there's only two voices. I don't want to listen to either of them. I want to listen to something more complex. And if this thing doesn't travel well through Facebook, then I'll make it myself.
It's interesting. It's something from my boys' world. I have twins, they're 23. When they were much, much, much younger kids, they watched cartoons or something like 8 o'clock in the evening and said, well, if they watch cartoons on 8 o'clock in the evening, I don't have to watch it, it's okay. And then we met friends, and we were sitting outside with two other boys, and they played a game, four of them. Each one would say a tune, and we'll find which show it's played from. And my boys are starting to hum, and the other two say, you're allowed to watch this program? And I said, oh, what does it mean? So I watched it with them. It was Family Guy or American Dad, or something for Seth MacFarlane. And I just joined them, and I watched it with them every day. And I said, they already saw it. What am I going to say? You cannot see it. But we were talking about it. The interesting thing was Seth MacFarlane, who is a genius and is doing many good things, he's also he likes Frank Sinatra and the 50s the songs. My late husband was crazy about Frank Sinatra. He couldn't give his music or his ideas to the boys. He was in a different world. They were in a different world. And all of a sudden, there was one day when he was sick, they celebrated 100 years of Frank Sinatra all over the United States, and they had a big performance in New York. And part of our team was working there, said, Tzili, bring Leon, because it's Frank Sinatra. Let's put him in the back and it will be fine. And who is emceeing the evening? Seth MacFarlane. So I took a photo and I sent it to the boys. I said, look who is here. And then I didn't know he started to sing Frank Sinatra. So I showed it to the boys. It came out that they know all the music and they like all the music through Seth MacFarlane, who used it in his shows. They had no idea their father was part, from this world. The whole round, they know so much from our world, and they use it in a very different world, and they do it quietly because it's in the ears. You don't see it, you don't hear it. So it's just technology leads. The question is, what do you do with this, and how do you relate to this, and where do you find the common ground so you can really hop on and do it together? And it's rolling, and it's rolling, and it will roll forever. And we just need to keep ethics alive and not to put them away, just to be with them on that wagon,
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But when you talked about it, I think that the threats, if you want to think about threats, they're always in humanity. So so if you talk about art or the future of art, if there's anything that kind of threaten it nowadays, I feel, is that it's basically if in the past art was seen as something that is exterior to reality, right, now art is seen as something that is supposed to serve reality.
Right.
And this idea that right now, when Meir Shalev died, there was a big debate because Netanyahu
didn't say anything.
It took him a lot of time, and then he said something very minor.
Annoying.
And no, and the idea was that many people, like, I don't know, Amit Segal said, what do you want?
TV personality.
Meir Shalev criticized Netanyahu and his politics. He asked him to resign. So what? This guy was his enemy. You want to say that he wrote good books? So I think that this kind of a reductive kind of binary thing, this idea of saying, Meir Shalev always said nasty things about him, and I never liked him. But his importance to literature, this right, ability to use the but is something that we're losing. And I think that when it becomes more reductive, there is something about the idea that when we watch a movie or a TV series, we want to know the bottom line. Yes. Is it a good movie or a bad movie, right, because of what it says? is it a pro-abortion movie or against abortion? And I think that this combo of right-wing thoughts on the right hand and the and and PC and identity culture on the other, the people who suffer, or the people who suffer from it, are both the artists and their audience, because the art supposed to be stopped being this kind of open space in which you can experiment, and it should be a space that echoes already things that were checked by the FDA and that we
So
know
this
that
is
they are
what I meant
great.
before about, when I said, that people think now what to say, because then non-relevant feedback comes in, which has nothing to do with what they say or what they do or what the value of what they do. Yeah, it was very annoying what happened,
Yeah, it's basically, for me, it's really misunderstanding what art is all about.
Yes,
I think
completely.
I think that people traditionally who tried to limit the scope of art were fundamentalist religious entities, or fascists. And
Right.
now it almost becomes kind of a normal a liberal truth that, that things should be regulated. Now, I'm saying when I write stories, like I write rapists, I write murderers, I write mass murderers. When I write them, in my story, I don't want to make them as simplified as they can. I use this platform to try to understand something that I can't understand in real life. So I try to build some kind of bridge to it. But the moment that you build a bridge to it, then they say, but it's not clear.
Yes.
Like if he's playing I know that there was this I think a movie, Free Signs in I forgot, it was something like Nebraska or something, Free Signs in some place.
Right.
And I remember that the person who was nominated for the supporting actor role was a guy who played a racist sheriff, or racist deputy sheriff. And the thing is that many people wanted to boycott him because they said that he made this character too likable.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I'm saying that there is something, or when Sarah Silverman talks about Jew face, only Jewish people can play Jewish people. What so this idea, or only homosexual can play homosexual. So why not have only a sociopath play psychopath killers? It's really like, they're also being shown in a very negative light in Hollywood movies, and the sociopath have such difficulty finding a job. So why put sociopath actors out there? I'm saying there is something ridiculous about it, because when you talk about race, if I want to make a movie tomorrow and it will be about the Second World War, and Adolf Hitler will be played by an Afro-American actor, what do I want to deal with? Who should I deal with? Like, I'm saying it could be the German Guild of Actors saying, well, actually, or the Austrian. They say, well, Hitler was Austrian. Why do you bring an American to play an Austrian? It's not in his heritage, And on the other hand, maybe people will say, how dare you smear, I don't know, Afro-American. But I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about how reality is something that is impossible to digest. I want to talk about some kind of a sensation of confusion. So I'm saying this liberty is being taken, it's a little bit like, with when you go and you see a movie, a series in Netflix, the unwritten contract between you and this series is that if you read those 4 sentences, you know how you're going to feel like when the series is going to end. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to confuse you, if they say it's a thriller and it's going to be funny, you're going to sue them, because you want it to be
it's
like
really
this.
Diminishing the intelligence of the audience. completely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I want to
This
say
is a
something
process of
that
many years
is
over.
very pragmatic and said, but I'm running out of battery, and to charge it, I need to take my headphones out. So
she has a Zoom soon.
So we let you go and we'll do it again. It's always hard to let you go, but
yeah.
Okay.
So
thank you.
We are going, I'm going to come back in a month, so I will see you in the demonstration.
Yeah.
All right. We're sure to bump into each other.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You, me, and 200,000 other people.
That's okay. That's wonderful.
Etgar, thank you. We'll talk again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.